Alright you guys, so before I start this video, today is actually Christmas Day, and Santa had got me some gifts that he wanted me to open for you guys, so let's get to it. Check this out. He got me an arcade fun portable gaming console with 200 classic games. You see that? This feels fluffy. Shirt. How do you know my size? It's a large. What does it say? It says Santa's Workshop Handcrafted Toys. Whoa, an elf hat, look at that. Wow, it's from the movie Elf. That's pretty cool. All right, and one last gift from Santa. Okay, this is kind of obvious. Another Dragon Ball Z drink? Now this one is Warrior Power. How did Santa know I like drinks? You know, he must have seen that last video I did on that retro game console, you know, with the TV in it. I forgot which one that was. I'll just put it up here so you guys can see it, but I guess this is the other flavor that they had. It looks like Five Below, I think. You know what, since it is Christmas, I should probably go ahead and put this stuff on. You know what's cool? There's like this trick that I learned how to do, I guess. And it's like if you tap like your head or your shirt or something like that, like it magically just puts it on for you or something like that. So you don't have to like take off your shirt and then put it on, you know. So it's kind of like this. Like, watch this. Just like that. Wow. That actually kind of looks nice. Alright, I am back. And why is there a Sega Genesis on my chair? I mean, this is my Sega Genesis. He didn't just randomly dig up a Sega Genesis online or somewhere. Oh, I know why he did. He wants me to show you some Christmas games or holiday or winter themed games for the Sega Genesis. Let me show you a couple winter Christmas themed games on the Sega Genesis. Alright, so the first one I have here is called Daze Before Christmas. Believe it or not, this isn't actually a Genesis game. This was actually released in Australia. So it's technically a Sega Mega Drive game. This is a pretty good one. And you play as Santa Claus. And in this game, you basically have 24 levels. These levels are actually like really creative. You know, you get to collect presents. You know, kind of like Rings and Sonic, you get to, you know, go around and collect them. And then opening these gifts, you know, you either have... you either get like toys or sometimes enemies like pop out of the presents, so you have to cap them, and then, you know, they leave behind presents, so it's like a win-win, you know, either way. But also picking up coffee, you know, means you turn into like this mean Santa, so it's kind of like the game's invincibility. Although the only thing is you don't get to collect presents as mean Santa, but you know, it's totally fine. And what's really cool about this game is that you can actually ring bells, which act as your checkpoints. The game really isn't that hard either. You know, I was playing it and it's kind of on the low side, you know, which is not really common with a Genesis game. Even if you die and you fall into pits, you end up getting unlimited continues. So the graphics and sound are just fantastic. I mean, you know, in between levels when they show you it, the artwork is fantastic. I absolutely love it. It looks pretty cute in my opinion. Also, the other thing too is that you get to travel to places like Russia, where you're actually delivering presents under the chimneys, which is really sweet, while it's avoiding hazards as well. I do recommend trying this game out if you have an emulator or something like that, which I think this one is actually really cool in my opinion. Alright, so this next one is called James Pond 2, Codename Robocod. And if you guys are hearing me correctly, that's right, it's not James Bond, it's James Pond. So at first when I was playing this, I had no idea who I was supposed to be. I was, just this weird creature. And I thought he was really weird because he has this ability where he like stretches out like really, really tall, which I just thought was bizarre. I was like, why? But it turns out that's actually a great ability, believe it or not, because he can actually reach up to places where it would be impossible to like jump up to and like grab onto ledges. So I think that, makes for a pretty unique experience. It turns out James Pond is actually a fish, believe it or not. So you play as a fish. At first when I was playing it, I didn't really think it was giving off Christmas vibes because I wasn't really thinking about it. But then the more I started playing it, the more I started to realize, okay, now I started to see in between levels when you go door to door that it has like candy canes and stuff like that. It does have that Christmas vibe to it technically. I mean, you are collecting like presents, cars, toys. And this game is kind of corny in a way too, because you do have like blocks in which if you jump up on them, stuff comes out of them. So it could be good, it could be bad. Kind of like Super Mario Brothers actually. So pretty cool. And it's not really that hard either. So, it's pretty good. I mean, you do get 3 continues, of course. So overall, not bad. All right, this one really isn't a Christmas game, but it does have some Christmas elements to it, so I figured I'd include it on this list, and that one is called Clayfighters. Now, Clayfighters is kind of a weird game. I don't want to say it's a good one, but it's basically a parody of Street Fighter 2, and you play as these like weird mix of characters. For example, you have like a snowman, you have like a Laffy Taffy, you have like a fat lady with big boobs, a clown, a blob, and you have like Elvis Presley whose hair looks like a black comb. What's weird about this game is that it actually supports the 6-button controller. So that tells me that this game was a later Genesis game where the 6-button controller came out, and fighting games are starting to support it now. So you get a pretty nice selection of punches and kicks, so really cool. And the other thing too is that much like Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, you can actually adjust the game speed and the settings. So if you want crazy fast gameplay, that's an option for you. Now, much like these older fighting games in the 90s, kind of like Street Fighter, you kind of have to figure out the movesets of each character. I'm like legitimately trying to do that in the game, and I can't seem to figure out any of them. So I don't know whether it's bad controls. It's just, I guess everyone is different. I don't really know. But I tried pulling it off several times in the game, and for some reason I seem to be pulling them off at random. So to me, this game is kind of like a button masher. But again, not really a Christmas game. But if you want to know where the Christmas vibe comes from, you actually get to play as a snowman, like I mentioned before. But let me tell you guys, the snowman is probably the worst character in the entire game. I mean, his punch is like seriously ineffective, and the range is just so utter garbage. I couldn't even beat Helga the first round, and I kept on getting my ass kicked. So I had to use characters like the Blob. Tiny kind of helped me out a little bit. Other than that, I mean, if you don't mind his weirdness, it's not really on the level of Street Fighter 2, but if you want to get a laugh with your friend or something like that, give it a try. All right, the next one I have on this list is Home Alone for the Sega Genesis. Now, this one is kind of an interesting one, and that's because I'm kind of used to the pick up and play type of vibes that you get when playing a Sega game. But Home Alone kind of isn't like that, because you kind of have to figure out what to do. And if you hadn't like watched YouTube videos or something like that on it, if I hadn't, of course, I probably wouldn't even know what to do. But of course, if you haven't seen Home Alone the movie, it's based off of that, of course. And I kind of think that with like almost all movie-based games, they turn out to be terrible or like rushed in some type of way. But this one actually is not that bad. In fact, this one is actually kind of good. So you basically start off outside in front of the mansion that Kevin gets left at, and you're going around on a sled, knocking over snowmen and collecting items. And in this game, you have to go into each of the 5 houses and set traps. And setting traps, you can set like tar, ice, toys. If you play on the expert level, which I'm not gonna lie, I didn't, because the game for me is really that tough. But you do have access to more stuff on the expert level. So the beginner level, you don't really have access to as much stuff. Setting traps basically kind of helps you catch the wet bandits who go into each house and try to loot as much as they can. So you have to go into these houses, and you have to stop them from completely flooding the houses. So you basically And they have like a pain meter too, so you can basically shoot them down, and that's what you do. You continue shooting them down until their pain meter goes all the way up. The only issue is that you will, unfortunately and often, run out of ammo. You can go into houses and you can collect loot yourself, or you can go outside and run up the snowman and get more items. Like for example, if you put like a snowball, like a rubber band, or like a blow dry or something like that, you have like a weird gun name like the bazooka gun or something like that. I honestly forget, but I mean, you can get really creative with the weapons that you make or with the items that you use. So that's pretty cool. But keep in mind though that some weapons, they kind of run out a little quicker than others. But overall, I think this one is worth trying, even though it's not exactly the easiest game in the world. I would say definitely get the Genesis version, because for me, getting the games on the cartridge just kind of makes me want to invest in a lot more than, playing it on an emulator. I mean, that's just me personally, but yeah, that's pretty much Home Alone. And of course, I can't forget to mention the sequel, which is Home Alone 2. This one, unfortunately, is not quite as good as the first one. The good thing about Home Alone 2 is that they got a couple things right. I mean, for example, from the first game, they basically put the idea in that you can go in and like, collect items, and, create your own weapons. So that fortunately exists in Home Alone 2, and it's much simpler too. It's basically a platformer. It's not like you having to try to strategize a little bit and you're kind of like, well, I don't know what to do, type of thing. But let me tell you, this platformer is a pain in the butt. A lot of the enemies are pretty cheap, especially like after the first level. You have like guys throwing suitcases at you in the sorting room. And then the third level, I couldn't really figure out what I was supposed to jump on. So it's kind of a little confusing, I guess. But I mean, when I played it for the first time, it was pretty tough, and I was getting my ass railed by the airport security. So if you guys want to give this a try, just know that it is very challenging. But other than that, that's pretty much Home Alone 2. Ooh, this one's actually a good one. So this one is Snow Bros. And this one was actually made by Tengen. And if you guys don't know Tengen was famous for making unlicensed games on the NES. So Nintendo and Tengen were beefing for a minute. On the flip side though, Tengen actually made pretty good games, such as this one. And in this one, you have to save two princesses from like an evil witch. And you're basically going around kind of just capping your enemies, turning them into snowballs and just running them off to the side of the screen. And it's got like this Bubble Bobble type of feel to it. Or if you guys haven't heard of that, obviously you guys have, but if you guys haven't, it kind of gives off like this 80s like classic retro arcade type of vibe to it, which is really, really sweet. And I actually recommend that you invest in a rapid fire controller, because that makes the gameplay a lot better. You basically go through like 10 waves on a single stage. So for example, you're on like stage 1, you're going through like 10 waves before reaching the boss. So you get like a really nice mix of enemies. You get like monsters that breathe fire. You get like dancing monkeys or chimpanzees or something like that. And the difficulty actually isn't that bad. It's pretty manageable. You do get 3 continues, of course. If you lose all your continues, you actually get a nice password feature. But this one's actually a really fun one too. I actually recommend playing it with a friend, believe it or not, because it is actually co-op too. So I think this one is definitely worth giving a shot. All right, so this next one is probably not been released on cartridge, but if you are interested in playing it on an actual Genesis, you can probably pick something up like an EverDrive and load it up on there. But there is a ROM available, and this one is called Sonic Winter Adventures. Now, if you guys don't know already, I'm actually a big fan of Sonic hacks. It's just that I don't really do them on this channel because there are just so many of them. This one's actually a pretty promising hack. It does have a lot of potential. You pretty much have new attacks that carry over from the newer Sonic games, and I can't really tell you which Sonic games they're from because I hadn't really played the newer Sonic games recently, but they're actually good to have because they make up for a lot of the challenges that are presented in the game. Layouts are just completely different in terms of the levels, and the bosses are very tough. I mean, I had a tough time getting through the first boss, and it's especially tough because unlike a lot of Sonic games where the boss doesn't appear until Act 3, you actually get a boss on every single act. Like, I'm serious, and it's like, it's always something unique, and it's always something that I've never even seen before on a Sonic game. But this one is definitely worth trying out in my opinion. I think it does have a lot of potential. There is one issue I came across during gameplay, and that is especially when you lose rings. There is some serious slowdown. I know it's kind of like minimal in terms of the Sonic games on the Genesis because I've experienced them myself, but this one is a little bit worse. So just keep that in mind. And the last one I have on my list is Sega Winter Challenge. Basically, you're competing in winter games, basically skiing, and you go through like several events that you can try out. I forget the names exactly, but I'll just put them all up here. But you can try these out. Basically, your objective is to just complete them in time, and you can go back and always beat your record. But I really wasn't too fond of the gameplay, to be honest. For one, the graphics, although they really tried with the graphics, but I don't think the Genesis hardware was really up to the task. So the frame rate is extremely choppy and it's just not good at all. Sometimes I don't even know where I'm going. So it's easy to fall over. And the other thing that is just obnoxious to me is the music. I mean, it's basically just high-pitched fart sounds just all over the place. It's just, you know, I don't really even know what to make of this. I mean, this one's probably the worst one in my opinion out of the entire stack. I mean, if you want to try it, be my guest. That is pretty much all the games that I can recommend on the Sega Genesis that are either Christmas games or they have some type of holiday vibe to it or wintry vibes. You know, and like I said before, I mean, it's really hard to kind of find these type of games for the Genesis because, you know, a lot of these games don't exactly have wintry vibes. You know, but nevertheless, that just goes to show you that this is a great platform and one of my favorite platforms, actually. So I'm really glad that Santa actually left the Sega Genesis on my chair and was like, yeah, you know, show the people, you know, some wintry Christmas games, you know. So of course, you know, out of any other system, I mean, it could have been like PS1, PS2, or like probably PS5 or Switch or something like that. But no, he was just like, do Sega Genesis because I know that's your favorite system. And yes, the Sega Genesis is definitely my favorite system of all time. So I want to thank you, Santa, for that. And I also want to thank Santa for all these gifts that he gave me, including the power drink that he gave me. Unfortunately though, I'm not going to be trying it in this video because it is early in the morning and I'm probably going to tire out because it has like 100 milligrams of caffeine and loads of sugar. So I'm definitely going to wait on that. But anyways, guys, I hope you guys have a Merry Christmas. And if I don't post by next week, I wish you guys have a Happy New Year's as well.